50 minutes to 6 p.m. Central African time. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. If you're joining us, it is the weekend edition of the Iftar Drive. My name is Zahid, Jadwat, and I'll be keeping you company all the way through until Iftar time. And just a quick look at your Iftar times. If you are in Johannesburg, Iftar sets in at 6:49 p.m. If you are in Cape Town at 7:36 p.m. and in Durban at 6:41 p.m., as well as Port Elizabeth, 8 minutes past 7 p.m. this afternoon. Now, just before the break, we spoke with the MMC for Safety and Security in Cape Town, JP Smith, about the various security challenges in the city. Of course, you would recall recently President Cyril Ramaphosa announced that the military would be deployed to the Cape Flats to battle gangsterism in that area. We also know that the city is planning to build a 180 million rand wall along the N2 highway, which has drawn quite a bit of criticism. Joining me now for the flip side of this conversation is Axolile Notywala. He is a councillor with Good Party in the city of Cape Town, and he's also representing on behalf of Rise Mzansi. He joins us now. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.
For having me.
All right, so Cape Town's security challenges, the issue of crime quite rife in Cape Town. I don't think it's, I think it's most people are already familiar with the situation. If they haven't experienced it themselves, they have heard about it. Before entering into politics, Axolile, you were an activist, and I think you're quite familiar with the dynamics of the situation. How would you characterize Cape Town's crime issues? How did we get here?
Thank you very much for having me, and a good afternoon to your listeners. So, I mean, I've been involved in issues that have to do with policing, I guess, from the last 15 years or so. And one of the things that when I got involved that we realized was that communities themselves, particularly poor communities, townships, and informal settlements, are quite unsafe. And it's mostly because of the physical environment in which people live in. And what makes many of these people and these places and these communities unsafe is because people don't have toilets in their homes. They use communal toilets where they have to travel hundreds of meters to get to the toilets. They don't have public lighting. They don't have access to water. It's only communal taps as well, which means they also have to travel. And so all those conditions make the places in which people live in very unsafe. And when they have to try and access those services, many people get attacked and criminal attacks. And we have many cases of whether sexual assault or murder. And one of those cases is, which I talk about all the time, is a case of a young woman who was raped and murdered in 2016 in an informal settlement in Khayelitsha called SST section. And up until this day, the family hasn't received any sense of justice. But also 10 years later, that community still doesn't have clean, safe, and dignified sanitation services. And so it always it boggles the mind when the mayor says we are prioritizing Cape Townians because they feel unsafe. And the question has been, what about the people such as Sinokolo Mafevuka, who was killed, who was raped and murdered in 2016? What about the priority of that community, which still doesn't have sanitation services? And that's the question that we keep asking to the city of Cape Town and to the mayor.
Well, the city argues that it's working in the context of a national government that has a very different approach than its own when it comes to crime. It's obviously pushing for devolution of policing powers. To what extent would you say the city is actually able to directly tackle these issues before we even begin considering the outcomes of some of the measures that it has taken so far?
So I think this is where also there's problems in terms of the approach to crime and violent crime, in that it's always seen as an afterthought. that you have to wait for the crime to happen for you to react. But if we are to talk about prevention of crime, this is where municipalities have a huge role to play, because municipalities need to make sure that young people in particular have spaces, have recreational spaces, have activities, have things to do that will distract them from being involved in crime. Many young people are attracted to violent crime or are invited or are being recruited to crime because they don't have anything else to do, particularly again in Cape Flats and township communities. They don't have soccer fields, they don't have recreational spaces, and so there's just restlessness. And so even these attacks that the mayor and the city of Cape Town talks about, if you were to look at the ages of the people who are accused of throwing stones, these are 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. You don't need to throw these kids into jail. You need to create spaces for them. You need to divert. You need to create diversion so that they are not attracted to crime. But that's what the city is not prioritizing. And I do want to point out the facts and the lies of the mayor and the city of Cape Town. The original budget, where this 114 million came from, this was budgeted for under spatial planning and environment. That's the directorate in which where this budget line item falls. Not in safety and security. It's not there. It was in spatial planning and environment. In this year's adjustments budget in January, the adjustments budget that we had to adopt, which was adopted even though opposition voted against, but because the DA has a majority, it was adopted. In that adjustments budget, it was proposed that these line items be transferred from spatial planning to urban mobility. So this whole thing was a spatial planning issue. It was a spatial issue. It was never a safety issue. Now that amount, if you look at the budget, you will see that it falls within the Urban Mobility Directorate, which is the Transport Directorate. Again, this is not a safety and security issue, but what we see all the time and hear all the time are the lies being spread by the mayor, by the safety and security MMC, JP Smith, saying that this is a safety and security issue. And the question is, if this was a safety and security issue, why is the 114 million rand not under safety and security in terms of the directorate? And that's the question that no one is responding to from the city of Cape Town.
And then, it's quite important that you mention the need for spaces where these youth can actually be active and productive instead of being on the side of the highway and being able to throw stones. Now, what came up in my conversation with JP Smith earlier on was that the wall that is now intended to be built along the highway, that's merely meant to replace fencing that Sandra was supposed to have put up. And so he said anyone who actually objects to this wall is merely politicking. It's really not an apartheid wall, but it's really just the city taking over what was supposed to have been a national competency. Your thoughts?
So first of all, there was never any consultation, particularly with the communities who are going to be hidden by the wall. And so from the city's own, again, from the budget, if you look at the budget, this wall is going to be from Baden-Powell Drive, which is where Khayelitsha begins, from the other side of town. From when you're coming from Somerset side, the wall is going to be from Baden-Powell up until Langa, up until a road in Langa. And so it just shows where the wall is going to be. And again, there was never consultation with any of the community, whether from Khayelitsha, because it covers Khayelitsha, it covers Philippi, it covers Nyanga, it covers Langa. There was never consultation. And what I found to be very misleading and very problematic was the way in which the mayor went to an informal settlement that doesn't have toilets, that uses bucket toilets, that doesn't have taps, that doesn't have electricity, where he went and asked a preconceived question knowing what the response is going to be, because the way in which he asked that question was, do you want a wall for safety? Of course, people are going to say they want anything that has to do with safety. The mayor should have framed that question to say, if we had 114 million in Cape Town, what would you like us to spend that 114 million on? And we actually went and did that in BM section, one of the biggest informal settlements and the oldest informal settlements, which has existed for over 40 years, that still doesn't have proper sanitation, that doesn't have water, that doesn't have electricity. And we asked that same question. And many of the residents there said they fear going to the toilet at night because the one high mast light that they have in that community of about 4,000 households, there's one high mast light, hasn't been working for almost 2 years. Why not use that money to fix that high mast light? Why not use that money to fix and install more lights in BM section, because it's an informal settlement, so that people can feel safe when they go to a toilet? And those residents were saying, why not develop and build community colleges so that these 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-olds can have a space? Why not build soccer fields? Why not build recreational spaces? This is what the people of Khayelitsha, this is what the people of the Cape Flats are saying and are wanting. They're asking, why not build us homes? Why build a hall to hide us? And if the city and the mayor and JP Smith were genuine enough, this process should have gone through public participation. But the fact that this never went through public participation, it was a decision that was made by the DA caucus, it was a decision that was made by JP Smith, and it is being imposed to Cape Townians. That's where some of the problems lie.
Now, you mentioned that this project does carry a price tag exceeding 114 million rand. And I'm just wondering, if you were handed the budget for that wall today, what does an alternative architecture of security look like for those living in the shadow of the N2? I know you mentioned lighting, you mentioned sports facilities. What else would you consider?
And again, so the biggest challenge and one of the biggest forms of services that people don't really consider as a safety measure, because majority of the Cape Townians have a luxury of having a toilet in their home. There are over 667, I think over 660 informal settlements in Cape Town. Majority of those people don't have toilets in their homes. In informal settlements, you won't find someone that have a toilet in their home. If it's a toilet in their home, it's a bucket toilet. So that 114 million rand could replace the bucket toilets and build toilets for their homes. If they don't have bucket toilets, they have communal toilets, which would be a stretch of about 10 to 15 toilets that's situated 100 meters, 200 meters away from people's homes, where people in the morning or at night, they have to walk to access that toilet. Again, that 115 million could either be spent to build toilets that are closer to people's homes, or to make sure that when people have to travel to go to a toilet, it's safe. It is extremely dark in many of these informal settlements because people don't have public lighting. The only type of public lighting that exists is high mast lights. High mast lights were an apartheid invention. They were an apartheid invention that was installed in townships primarily so that the apartheid army and police could surveil Black people. It was installed for surveillance so that the army could see where Black people are moving. It was never a safety and security invention. And we are saying that you need to remove this high mast light and install proper lighting in informal settlements so that people can feel safe. Once you are able to do that, you also make sure that you build recreational facilities, because you have to divert young people from being involved in crime. If we do this, if we include the army, if we build a wall, we're not stopping crime. We are just displacing crime, because where the wall is, criminals are going to move to a place where there is no wall. That means you are displacing crime from where it is, you're just moving it to another area. we don't need to be displacing crime. We need to prevent and stop crime. You can only do that by investing in young people and investing in communities. And that's what the city of Cape Town is not doing.
Mm. And now, of course, we are seeing the military imminently being deployed once again to the Cape Flats. And having seen previous deployments come and go with little long-term change, I'm wondering what is being missed by a strategy that seems to prioritize boots on the ground over the sophisticated crime intelligence and the social bridge building that you've been advocating for.
So both the SANDF and the wall, these are populist ideas. It is because it is an election year and both the DA and the ANC want to seem like they are doing something. They want to seem like they are doing something in relation to crime. And the recent crime statistics shows us that crime is a social issue. You need to solve for poverty, you need to solve for unemployment, you need to solve for restlessness of young people. And for the first time now, we're seeing in the crime stats. And again, the question that we have to ask is how the wall or the SANDF is going to stop that. Because for the first time, Manenberg now is in the top 30 most murderous police stations or most murderous police precincts. For the first time, Manenberg is there. And the response to that is a wall. Manenberg is so far from the N2. And so how is that going to help the people of Manenberg if you build a wall on the N2? How is the SANDF going to solve the crime in Manenberg? Because again, if you send the SANDF to Manenberg, the gangs and the criminals are going to move to a different area because the SANDF is there. You're going to displace crime. And so it is a waste of resources. It is a waste of money because the SANDF, there's money that will be spent there. It is a waste of money that could be spent to uplift these communities. Because one of the responsibilities of the municipalities, again, particularly metropolitan municipalities, is economic development. And so if you don't invest in that, in economic development, that means you're not creating sustainable jobs. The DA will talk about the jobs that they've created. Many of those jobs are EPWP jobs, which are 6 months jobs at very low pay because EPWP is very low pay. And so you have a cycle of young people who get a job now, 6 months later, they don't have a job. How else are they going to get income? They're going to go to gangs because gangs provide income for these young people. If you don't solve those things, you're going to be chasing a tail each and every year. You're going to be taking young people to prison. They go to prison, even if a young person has never killed anyone. If you go take them to prison, they're going to be hardened gangsters there because they're going to be initiated into the gang culture. They're going to come back. They're going to be brave enough to kill people. And that's what we are witnessing in Cape Town each and every day. That's why majority of the gang murders are in the Western Cape and they are in Cape Town.
Axolile, I think there's a lot more to unpack in this discussion, but unfortunately, that's all we've got the time for. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you for the time.
That was Axolile Notywala. He is a councillor in the city of Cape Town, representing Good Party on behalf of Rise Mzansi, speaking to us about two recent developments with regards to crime in Cape Town, of course, one being the N2 wall, the proposed N2 wall, and the other being the imminent deployment of the South African National Defence Force to fight gangsterism at the Cape Flats. That brings us to exactly 1 minute past 6 p.m. Let's break for us, and when we come back, we'll continue with the show. Stay with us.
With Ashraful Aid this Ramadan, your zakat changes lives. It feeds families facing hunger, restores dignity to those in need, and brings hope where it is needed most. From food relief to essential support, your zakah reaches communities with care, transparency, and impact. Give with confidence, give with trust. Make your zakah count this Ramadan. Give your zakah to Ashraful Aid. Help change lives today.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge. your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities, conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities. Your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Ramadan, please consider donating to the Islamic Dawah movement. For over 45 years, IDM has built over 80 masjids and distributed more than 160,000 in local languages. IDM has installed over 250 bowls and water wells. Over 1,000 children are fed daily, building strong Muslim communities in disadvantaged areas.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic Sharia and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements